this is 2021 Corvette C8 of mine, but you tuned in to watch my 2021 Pinarello Prince. Two things share a lot in common. Stay tuned and let's find out. Roll that intro.
Hello everyone, how are you? This is yours truly, Diabetic Cycling, coming at you once again with another bike review. For those of you new to this channel, this is a channel sponsored by and brought to you by none other than my own dang wallet. I have no sponsor obligations. I am not paid to say certain things. I don't have to return a review loaner bike to anybody after a short ride. Everything that I bring to you here is as genuine and unbiased as possible. If you're into that sort of thing, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and the bell notification so I can come see you more often. As far as who I am, as far as that's concerned, I'm just really a nobody. I don't have any cred being an ex-pro. I'm not a mechanic. Just a regular normal guy you're gonna run into on your next weekend club ride, and you might probably be able to drop me. Maybe I can drop some of you, but that's really not important. I'm just a normal guy coming to you with just my own honest opinions and thoughts, so that maybe what I went through could help you in your decision-making process, whether in the short-term future or whether years down the road maybe you are considering what I'm talking about as a second-hand used bike. Now you may be wondering why I bought a Pinarello Prince instead of a Pinarello Dogma. Yes, the Dogma carries an astronomically insane, eye-watering price tag. However, I could have afforded it. I mean, we live in land of credit card. I could have charged it and just make monthly payments, and I would have been able to afford it. But there's a reason why I ended up getting my Prince. Let's talk about it. Okay, so let's just start this review by talking about Pinarello's road bike range. So I won't necessarily go into their Gravel. I won't talk about their time trial bike Bolide. So let's just focusing straight on the road bike range only. So at the top of the food chain is what you are probably familiar with, object of many people's desire, sometimes a little pretentious, sometimes a little bit of an elitist, just oozing out. It would be the Dogma. So current iteration here in 2022, it's the Dogma F series, previously F12, F10, F8, which you're probably all familiar with. Bradley Wiggins, Chris Froome, Geraint Thomas, these guys all winning the Tour de France on those bikes. So right under the Dogma range is what I'm gonna show you today. Is it this way? Oh, it's this way. You see my bike right here. So right under Dogma is Prince, which is the second from the top. Now Prince borrows a lot of characteristics, engineering, design cues, and everything else via trickle down from the Dogma. Now before Dogma was introduced some years ago, Prince was actually the top of the line race bike from Pinarello. Now, and then under Prince, a little bit more wallet friendly, you're gonna find things like Paris, and I'm not sure if they still make the model GAN, G-A-N, but that's also under the Prince model. And then we're gonna break down Prince into two different flavors, besides the rim brake and the disc brake stuff. But Prince could be had in two different iterations, one being FX. FX Prince uses Toray T900 carbon, so it's gonna be a little bit lighter. And then the version that I have is the normal regular Prince that's built with the T700 Toray carbon. Okay, so before I go into nitty-gritty with the Prince review, let's establish a baseline of where I'm coming from. So obviously I already shared with you, I'm nobody, but all the opinions and thoughts that I'm going to share with you would be based on all the bikes that I've had the pleasure of owning and riding in the past personally. So currently in my fleet would be Factor Austro Van, which the review video could be found here. And also still in my fleet currently is the Orbea Orca, which will also be found here. And then I've had the pleasure of riding Canyon Ultimate. I've owned a bunch of Cannondales, Synapse, as well as Evo High Mods. I've owned a couple of TCRs from Giant, great bikes, and then Giant Defy. Not as great, but still a great bike. And then I've owned the Focus Izako Max for a couple of years, great bike. The Rosa Pininfarina SK, and then Merckx San Remo. I've owned a couple of titanium frame bikes from Lightspeed. I've also owned and ridden a couple of Specialized Delay, Cervelo S3 in its most modern, most recent iteration, and then a bunch of group sets and wheel sets to boot. Alright, so let's talk about the buying experience. So as you guys all know, since 2020, purchasing bike, it has been very difficult due to supply and demand not balancing out properly. As well, on top of all of that, the prices have skyrocketed, so that's been a problem. And when you find the right color, maybe you won't find the right size. When you find the right size, maybe you won't find the right color. So long story short, as far as my Prince is concerned, I've been wanting the Pinarello Prince since it was reintroduced back in 2018. And I've been wanting one, couldn't find one, couldn't put money together, you know, whatever, have it. Now, however, I saw in stock status from RNA Cycle out of New York City, Labor Day weekend of last year, which would be 2021. So I immediately put my order in. It wasn't the color I wanted, but was the right size. And at the time, I also wanted to swap the stock cockpit, the stem and the handlebar, to the one-piece, slightly aero flavored all-in-one cockpit, a stem handlebar combination from Pinarello, their in-house brand Most. So it's a model called the Talon Ultra. So I put the order in along with the bike, but because I wanted the dealer to do all the putting together before the bike gets shipped, I told them, okay, just get the bar in, rebuild it, and then send me the full bike afterwards. So despite the order for the bike went in early September, the actual bar didn't end up coming in until like mid-December. So I waited 3 months after the order was in. The bike sat in their warehouse. So eventually the stem bar combination did come in. So they ripped out the stock stuff and then put the carbon stem handlebar combination on there. And the white glove delivery process was also awesome. If you want to see the unboxing video showing the bike as I received it before I changed a couple things to suit me, the unboxing video could be found right here. Okay, so let's talk about the size and everything else, details of the bike that I got. So my bike that I have is 51.5 centimeter, and the bar that I ordered was 42 by 100. Now, do keep in mind, 42 in Pinarello is actually 40 everybody else. So I ride a 40 centimeter wide bar for all my bikes. And when I talked to RNA, and they were kind enough to coach me, hey, you can't get the 42 from Pinarello. That way you end up with what's equivalent of 40. So that's what I ended up with. And then factory spec wheels are Fulcrum 500 DB. I'm not too sure about that, the model name, but I know they are Fulcrum wheels. They are very, very heavy right out of the box. So I actually ripped the wheels off the day that the bike got delivered. I didn't, so there's 0 miles got put on those wheels. And not only they're heavy, but they're also very narrow, bucking the trend of a wider rims popular currently. Perhaps they'll make a good training wheels for someone, but basically these are wheels just good enough so that you could ride the bike out of a shop if you bought the bike from a shop. And then as far as the sizing is concerned, normally I ride bikes that are 530 in stack and about 377 in reach. Now, depending on the model and the make, those numbers are going to be slightly different, but that's about the ballpark that I need to be at for a proper fit. A lot of people ask me whenever I put these bike review videos of, hey, how tall are you? What is your inseam? Now, those two numbers are important, but nowhere near as important as stack and reach because of the way your proportions are different and such. So I am 5'10", and my inseam would be somewhere between 30 and 31, but again, those numbers shouldn't be that important. I am 5'10", but I have longer torso with the shorter legs in comparison, while my arm length is basically about normal and typical. So again, I would need a bike that's about 377 reach, about 530 in stack. The 51.5 Pinarello Prince came in at a stack of 546 and then reach of 376. So reach is basically dead on to what I need, where the stack is about 15 millimeter taller than what I would have wanted. So basically immediately when I was buying the bike from RNA, hey, when you put my cockpit on with the new handlebar in the stem, just slam it, just cut it down. Let's just bring the cockpit as low as possible. So that's why the bike looks the way it is today. So let me give you, in terms of a comparison, where 51.5 would stack up. So let me give you a comparison with some of the other bikes so that you could kind of see how the sizing would work. Pinarello Prince 51.5. Compare that with, if I'm riding a Factor, I'm sitting on a 52. If I'm riding on a Cervelo, I'm gonna sit on 51. If I'm riding Cannondale, Evos, and Synapse, that I'm gonna be somewhere between 50 and 52, depending on what model. If I'm riding on Focus is Zalco, that was a small, And then if I'm riding giant, I'm gonna fit on small. And also if I'm riding a canyon, I'm gonna fit somewhere between extra small and small, somewhere in between, depending on the model. Okay, now let's talk about factory specs. So originally, back even from 2018, when the bike got reintroduced by Pinarello, the Prince was spec'd with the Shimano Ultegra. Now, because of the massive worldwide shortage of Shimano group sets, and Pinarello was able to get their hands on SRAM AXS group set. So what they did was they built out of the factory using the SRAM parts, and that's how I ended up RNA bicycles in New York. I got their inventory in, and that does not bother me at all, because if you have been watching my channel, I am a SRAM rider through and through. So it's actually great because I didn't have to buy a Shimano bike, rip out every Shimano bits, and then put all the SRAM bits on. So that worked out greatly. And then in terms of spec, as I shared with you, Fulcrum wheel set. And factory saddle is again from their in-house brand Most. It's a one of those short nose with the wider width with the center cutout. So it's very trendy saddle. However, cushioning is very, very soft, so I ended up discarding that because I like my saddle as hard as one can be, and that's what she said last night. And then factory spec comes with the Most, again their in-house stem Most, with the Most handlebar, all aluminum affair. Those were ditched in favor of the Talon Ultra, all carbon, all one piece. And the stem handlebar combination, the Talon Ultra, is just eye-wateringly expensive, just $1,000 in just by itself. So that's like almost 20% of the cost of the bike, which is just ridiculous. Okay, so as I always do, we're going to talk about the contact points first as I review the bike. So two things. The bar. This is actually surprisingly the highlight of this bike. Frame is great. This bike is awesome. However, the handlebar, the Talon Ultra, the part that I actually paid extra to put on, that is actually the highlight. So normally I would prefer the one piece, especially also aero bar, because of a couple of reasons. I don't buy it for being aero, because that's not where you're going to get aero gain, despite what the marketing departments will tell you. Aero means I'm going to have a flatter top portion, which means my palms could sit very comfortably on top of the bar surface, and I find that extremely comfortable. So that's why I got the aero bar. And then also having the stem all in one piece means my handlebar never has a wrong pitch up or down, or it's either shifting to the left or shifting to the right. It's always dead center, so it's perfect. And it being carbon, also the byproduct of this upgrade was that it's carbon from aluminum, so I saved a little bit of weight, which is an added bonus. And then second contact point of the bike is obviously the saddle, and the stock saddle didn't fit my style, so I swapped that out with my own saddle from Sella Italia Techno S1 SLR. Okay, so the frame and fork. The frame carries the frame and the fork, actually, the whole set carries beautiful Italian designs. So you're gonna see stuff like Canyon Ultimate, Factor Austral have clean, straight lines that are very easy on the eye. They look sleek. Now, not to say the Prince or the Dogma don't carry sleekness in their appearance, but the lines that are curvy and just beautiful, the Italian design flair, just so good. That said, I don't really care for some of the obnoxious silhouette lines on like a current iteration of a Dogma F. I think it's a little bit overdone, whereas the Prince still carries the design elements of it's a little from F12, little from F10, especially the fork. On the fork carries just enough lines and curve that make the bike look really handsome without looking obnoxious. The top tube has a bit of a hump, as you see. Down tube is aero, and it is absolutely beefy. And then you have the asymmetrical design, which is almost synonymous with the Pinarello. And the bottom bracket area, as you could imagine, and as trendy with other manufacturers as well, it is beefy, chunky, and just big for that power transfer. And then the spec sheet will tell you that the bike can fit up to 28 mil tires. But now here's the thing, I'm running 28 mil tires on my Prince, but as you can see, both in the seat stay, the rear triangle, as well as the fork, I'm pretty sure you could fit even wider tires here. The fork itself especially has a broad shoulder with plenty of room inside. So couple that with, I mean, Zip 303S is pretty, decently wide enough rim, so it's gonna, it's gonna stretch your tires out horizontally to make it wider. But even then, I bet you could put in 30 mil pretty safely. There you try 32, but just wanted to share with you that you could probably fit wider tires than 28. And then coupled with all that, the seat post, where is it? Right here. And then coupled with the additional nice touch is the color matching seat post that you see here. Maybe I can roll a B-roll showing the seat post, the red color paint theme is carried out from the rest of the frame set, which makes it look awesome. Because if it was the typical black seat post, I don't know how that would have looked the overall bike, but just beautifully executed. Okay, so let's now talk about the wheels. The stock wheels, as I said earlier, are from Fulcrum 500 dB wheels. Very heavy, very narrow, not good. I swapped that out with my Zip 303S wheels, which if you have watched my previous videos, you've seen them on my BMC. I also put the Zip wheels against my Hunt wheels at the about similar price range. So great set of wheels. As far as the Zip, it's my wheel, not the factory stock wheels, but the wheels are great, fast, smooth rolling, despite having an inherent flaw in the design and execution, which I'll talk about in a separate episode coming out soon. Okay, now let's talk about the ride quality. That's basically the single most important thing. Who cares about how good it looks, how horrible it looks, how light it is, how heavy it is, what it has, what it doesn't. It doesn't matter if it does not ride well. So here's the thing. So Pinarello, let's kind of take a step back. Let's talk about a Dogma, even though that's not what this bike is. It's, I can't get away from comparing to the Dogma, because this bike borrows a lot from Dogma. All the engineering and all the work, research, and all that stuff that went into the Dogma is visible here on this bike. So Dogma is just like what Specialized does with the Tarmac, what Factor does with Ostro. It's one bike that does everything. It's an all-arounder. Pinarello doesn't make a separate model that is aero. Pinarello doesn't make another model that's light, all climb bike. It's one bike that does everything. And Prince kind of borrows from that ethos, and that Pinarello DNA, the Dogma DNA, is very evident on this bike. So Prince inherits a lot from the Dogma, both in design and appearance, aesthetics, and engineering, where comfort and aero coexist happily on this one bike. It is not as light as my Canyon Ultimate was. It doesn't slice through dense fog like my Cervelo S3 being an all-out aero bike. While it's an all-arounder bike like my Factor Ostro, the two bikes cannot be any more different. This bike rides very differently than Factor Ostro, which is their all-arounder bike. Prince basically begs for more power to be put down, and it almost taunts me for being a weak rider. Now everybody has a different preference, but me personally, I put a lot of emphasis on the front end of the bike. So if I'm making a looping tight turn into corner, I'm like, my knees almost dragging on the ground like a MotoGP racer, and I want to have that. I want to know bike will carry the line that I am envisioning in my head, and also at the same time I want the bike to give me feedback that is alive, not deadened, so that I could be one with the bike and the road. And also at the same time, catch 22, I want the compliance from the front end so that my hands are not tired when I'm doing 90 120 miles an hour that day. So thankfully, happy to report my $1,000 front end cockpit along with the head tube and the angle and the co-working with the fork and everything. It's great to see and report to you that the front end is very confidence inspiring, and compliance is aplenty with that all one carbon bar, and the shape of the bar, how svelte it is, how narrow the tubing is, it actually feels great in my hands. So that's actually something that I'm very impressed with as far as Prince is concerned. I've climbed a ton on this bike, especially last winter when I was training for Mauna Loa ride, where I didn't feel like the bike was heavy to drag me down. I've also done plenty of centuries and long rides, so all day comfort, I never felt the bike was beating me up, so that was also great. Have been plenty of situations where I had to just put my head down, elbows tucked in, and just go as low as possible to chase some animals in front of me on group rides. So bike never really held me back. Like I said earlier, this is a great bike. Bike feels springy, bike feels alive, and it's very untamed, like a horse out in the wild that's just begging to be ridden hard. So bike never really held me back, and all the occasions where you would typically find yourself riding, the bike definitely delivers like a true Italian stallion. I've used this verbiage in my previous review video of a Factor Austro, so I'm gonna put a disclaimer here as well. I don't want to sound like a douche making certain analogy. So if I make you cringy by saying my next piece, I apologize in advance. So basically, when I was talking about the Factor Austro, I told you how the bike was grounded, stable, predictable. Factor rides a lot like a German car. So I compared it to a BMW Motorsport race car. The Pinarello Prince rides very differently. It is untamed, it's wild, it's so alive, and it's just like constantly just begging you. The Factor rides like it knows what your limit is, and then it just helps you maintain your limit as long as you can put out power. Whereas this thing, it doesn't care about what your max power is, it just wants more and more. It just wants to be ridden harder and harder. And that's where I would draw a comparison where this rides more like a Italian supercar. Okay, so I chose the Prince over Dogma for a variety of different reasons, because it gives me just about everything from Dogma at the fraction of the cost. And that's where my intro thing comes in, where I was comparing this to my Corvette. So let me explain it to you this way. So the Corvette, it's arguable. Some may call it a supercar, some don't, and I really don't care. It doesn't cost as much as your Lambos and Ferraris. But I'm in the conversation with the Corvette. It puts out 495 horsepower that are just completely wild. And the design, aesthetics, and the eye-popping Sebring orange color turns heads everywhere I go, just as a Ferrari would. Now, however, I got in the door with the Corvette at the fraction of the cost of what a Ferrari would have cost. And that's what sort of in line with the Pinarello Prince. I didn't spend the type of money that would have been required for the Dogma F series, but I have just about everything from that. So meaning I'm getting about 95% of what Dogma is at about half the cost, if not less. And you know, on top of that, I don't ride for Ineos Grenadier. I don't need a Dogma. This suits me just fine. Now, of course, that leaves me with a question. Seeing how great the Prince is, it does have me wonder what the Dogma would like. Would I never find out? I don't know. I'm happy with this Prince. I actually don't plan to sell the Prince ever. I think this is a bike that I'm gonna retire with, but we'll see how that goes. So am I jealous and envious of Dogma? No, but I am definitely curious indeed how much nicer a Dogma would be. So this conclusion actually may sound somewhat similar to my last bike review, but they are so similar yet so different. So I will just share with you my thoughts. So this is not the most aerodynamic bike, obviously. This is not the most lightest bike out there. The battle fighting weight of this bike, which means I'm not using some hollowed out titanium bolts, any of that nonsense. I got 2 bottle cages on there, the pedals, the power meter, the saddle, bar tape, the front mount, and everything that's on there in order to ride. That's coming in at about just a hair under 8 kilograms. So that's right around 17.5 pounds is where this bike is. So if you want to measure the weight differently like some of the other guys do, where everything is stripped off with the bare minimum, then obviously it would be lighter. But the weight isn't what everything's about, and a lot of the guys, especially the elitist folks, the weight weenies, as we lovingly call, they put so much emphasis on the weight, but the weight doesn't really, I mean, it matters, but it really doesn't matter when you look in the bigger picture. What good is a bike when it doesn't ride well just being light? You need overall experience. If you're going up, you're going to come down. If you are going straight, you're also going to make some turns. So overall experience of ride quality, the bike is great. It is deceptively light, and I don't feel that it's weighing me down on a 12% grade. So it's just really pleasant bike to ride. And not only that, it carries a Pinarello name on the frame. It delivers all that DNA that Pinarello is synonymous with. So that wraps up my review of Pinarello Prince. I make these videos to give you my honest opinions and thoughts. I purposely ride each bike about 1,000 miles before I can do a review, because I think I need all that experience, all that the time on the bike to really form good opinion. Unlike some of these other YouTubers, some people review bikes without even riding one, just based on spec sheet. Some people put up review videos after one 20-mile ride. That's I put zero stock in that. Also, if I'm gonna review a bike, I also don't watch any review videos of that particular model by anyone else, because I don't want their showing to cloud my own opinions and thoughts. So I hope I delivered what you may be looking for in terms of honest, unbiased, just some straight talk. I hope this video was meaningful to you. If this video satisfies you, got you what you were looking for, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Got any questions? Feel free to leave questions down below in the comment section. Thank you for sticking around. I appreciate your time. And until next time, you guys all take care. Safe riding out there. You've been awesome. I've been Diabetic Cycling. Until next time, you guys all take care. I'm out.